Hello and welcome to this video introducing Mainpac's Work Order Workbench. The Workbench is a new license feature used to graphically manage work orders. It is a visual tool with which you can see and make adjustments to your work order scheduling information, such as the planned start date, resource requirements, and assignments. So let's have a look. The Workbench shows a timeline or calendar period and work orders within that period. I'm going to collapse these two panels to give us a little more visibility. So it is a timeline, calendar dates written above and below, and each work order is a cell within that. There are a set of icons at the top used to display, used to control the appearance of the timeline. For instance, this toggle displays more information about the work order and gives them a size dependent on the description, whereas this one gives you that reduced visibility but gives you an indication of the duration of the work order by their width. There are panels, collapsible panels to the left, right, and below the timeline. We'll go into further detail on each of these in a later session, but today I want to have a quick look at the timeline and the utilization panel in particular, and how we can use them in the following two scenarios. One in which we are looking at the work that has been forecast for the next month and how that compares to our resource availability, and one in which we're looking at the work for the next week and making labor assignments to specific people. So at the moment, the timeline is showing the current month, and I want to look at the work due to start next month. To do that, I select the focus date, and I can move forward or backwards to a new date. So moving backwards could be especially useful if you want to look at a previous period and find out what you have completed and what you need to move forward. But in this case, I want to move forward to the next month, and I'll choose a date in the middle of that so that I can see the entire month. So as I've selected that date, you can see that the timeline has refreshed. It's showing a new calendar period and a new set of jobs. So what I want to do when looking at this month is determine whether I need to reschedule any of this work based on the labor availability on those days. And to do that, I'm going to have a look at the utilization panel at the bottom of the screen. So I'll just come over and click on that. It brings up that panel, and it shows me what resources classes I have. Looking at this panel, we can see that I have 3 resource classes defined: mechanic, a trade assistant, and electrician. And for each resource class, there is a donut chart, which compares the projected utilization, the scope of the work, to that resource class's capacity. So that donut chart in this case is the one showing 16%, 4%, and 0, which indicates that I have the overall capacity to handle this forecast work. Moving over to the right, however, we can see a histogram corresponding to the dates on the timeline. The gray area, those gray boxes in this histogram, indicate the capacity or the available hours. The blue indicates the scheduled work, and the red indicates that on that date, that resource class is over-allocated. So at an individual date level, we have some problems. In this particular example, so we can see certainly that on the 23rd, we have a problem with this over-allocation. In this particular example, the reason for this is that the date has fallen on a weekend, and my workforce is rostered only to work Monday to Friday. So I can identify the work order on the 23rd, which is a Sunday, and I can move it forward to the 24th. And as I do so, a window pops up to confirm the date and the time. This window also shows the shift start times for not only the day that I'm dropping it on, but for the next couple of days, so that I have some of that visibility. And we can see that my shift are started. My people worked shifts from 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. So after confirming that change, the screen is refreshed, the timeline is altered, And the utilization panel now shows a blue scheduling bar on the 24th rather than that red bar on the 23rd. So we've used the utilization panel to identify a conflict and use a drag and drop feature of the timeline to adjust the plan date, resolving that conflict. So next I want to look at how to use the workbench to do the labor assignment, to start allocating work to a specific individual. So I'll do a couple of things. I'll change the timeline view from 1 month to 1 week. And note that I can, sort of drag and drop this way as well to change the view, as well as setting the focus date in particular. I'm also going to look at the view to change the view to one that allows us to break down the work order to look at the resource requirements. And to do that, I toggle this switch here to that more people-related view. So note that a single work order may require multiple people, multiple resource classes to work on it. For instance, it may require 2 mechanics, or it may require a mechanic and a trade assistance. So this resource level view allows us to break down the work order to that resource per step level so that I can make those individual assignments. Looking then at the utilization panel, I'm going to look at assigning my trade assistants. So I can click on any one of those resources and it brings up this view, which initially shows you the information we've seen before, the donut chart and the histogram. But it also gives me this ability to choose between this chart, a calendar, and a labor resource view. So the calendar gives me a kind of a day-by-day indication of how many people I have working on that day and whether there's any over allocations, whether it's red. I think if I move forward to some of these, I might see a red, not, but we'll go back and we'll have a look at this date. And what I want to look at is this labor resource view, which shows me how many people I have got available to me, whether they are allocated or not allocated. And it, so I can see here that I have 4 trade assistants and little work allocated to them. So to assign them, it's simply a case of dragging and dropping onto the timeline. So I can see that I have a trade assistant, an unallocated trade assistant required, and I can just drag and drop, and now it says, yes, this one is allocated to trade helper 2. Note that it's also updated the allocated hours here, so it's updated both the timeline and the information available about the individual person. Note that if I try and drop this trade helper onto the mechanic, it gives me this validation results and says, no, that person does not have the required type. They're not a mechanic. So that labor assignment is very easy at this drag and drop level. Moving forward again, if you get to a particular day and that person is not actually available, so you need to have a different person working on that, I can easily change the assignment by dragging somebody else onto it, and it is now changed to be allocated from this person. It's allocated back to the person I've just dropped onto it. And so that can be done whenever the allocation needs to change because they haven't finished a work, or they've got a different work order that has become more important, or because they were just not able to come in that day. So what we have demonstrated here are the drag and drop capabilities of the workbench and how it can be used to visualize your work and to streamline the labor allocation process. That's it for this session. In later sessions, we will have a look at the other aspects of the workbench, such as performing individual or batch update actions, drill more into those validation checks, what sort of validation checks are made, and look at how to group and filter work orders, and indeed how to set up your shift rosters for your labor resource. But that can be in a different session. Thank you for your time.